Hi everybody and welcome to Rocco Baby Crochet. A huge welcome back to my regular viewers and subscribers. I hope you're all well, and a massive warm welcome to anybody who's just found the channel for the first time. I hope you enjoy this tutorial, stick around and consider subscribing. It will mean that you won't miss out on my next tutorial or pattern, and I've got some really fun Halloween patterns planned over the next few weeks, and it'll also support what I'm trying to do over here at Rocco Baby Crochet as well. This tutorial we are going to learn how to do the beautiful Jasmin stitch, and I know I say this about every stitch tutorial that I do, but I really do love this stitch. I think it's beautiful. It creates such a wonderful texture and pattern, and the thickness is just lovely. I'm actually making one for my bedroom right now out of this stitch in a lovely grey yarn, and it looks beautiful. I can't wait to finish it and share some pictures over on our Facebook page. So this sample here was worked up using Red Heart Baby Soft Steps in the colour pink. The tutorial today I'm using Stylecraft Chunky in the colour Duck Egg, but you can use any yarn that you want to for this stitch. I do think it looks lovely in a bit of a thicker, so an Aran weighted or upwards. I think it works up really nicely, and as long as you use the hook that's recommended for the weight of yarn, then that'll be perfect for the Jasmin stitch. So grab your hooks, grab your yarn, grab a cuppa, and let's learn this stitch together. To begin with, what you want to do is make yourself a slip knot and place that onto your hook. And the Jasmin stitch is worked starting off with a row of puff stitches, and then we build on that to create the height of the projects that we want. To start that off, what you're going to do is chain one, and then you're going to pull up a loop on your hook which is a couple of centimeters in height. Yarn over, and I find it helpful if you secure the yarn that's on your hook with your finger, just so the height of the stitch doesn't change when you're working in and out of stitches. And then you're going to insert your hook back into that chain that you've just created, yarn over and pull up a loop. And we're going to do that in total 3 times for every puff stitch that we create. So that's 1, yarn over again. I'm going to secure the yarn on my hook, insert my hook back into that chain stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, 2, yarn over again, secure the yarn that's on my hook, insert my hook back into that chain stitch and pull up a loop. So that's 3. If your loops aren't quite the same height, sometimes you can adjust them just by wiggling your hook backwards and forth until they all come to the same height, but keeping hold of the yarn that's on your hook is a really good little technique which helps with that as well. To finish off this puff stitch, you want to pinch your working yarn at the base here, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. And by pinching this yarn here at the base, we've created a little space, and you want to insert your hook into that space that you've just created, yarn over and pull through. Now traditionally this stitch would be finished using a UK double crochet or US single crochet, but I find that can leave some spaces and gaps in my finished piece of work, so I like to finish it off with a slip stitch. So I'll just pull through again and then I'll chain 1. And then to create our second puff stitch, we're going to place it here. So just in between the top of the puff stitch that we've just created and the slip stitch, you should have a small space, and that's where you're going to place your second puff stitch. So pull up your yarn again until it's a couple of centimeters in height to match your first puff stitch, yarn over, secure the yarn on your hook, insert your hook into that space at the top of the puff stitch you've just made and underneath the slip stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Again, we're going to do this in total 3 times. So yarn over again, secure your yarn on your hook, insert your hook back into that space, yarn over and pull up a loop. That's 2, yarn over, secure your yarn on your hook, insert your hook into the same space and pull up a loop, and that's 3. Then we're just going to pinch the yarn at the base again, yarn over and pull through, insert your hook into the space you've created by pinching the yarn, yarn over and pull through, slip stitch and chain 1. I'll show you that one more time. So again, we're going into this space here in between the top of the last puff stitch and the slip stitch we've just made, pull up a loop, yarn over, secure your yarn, insert your hook at the top of that last puff stitch that you've made and underneath the slip stitch. The first time you do that it can be a little bit tight, so just have a little bit of patience. Yarn over and pull up a loop, so that's 1. Yarn over, secure your yarn, insert your hook back into the same space, yarn over and pull up a loop for 2. Yarn over, secure your yarn, insert your hook back into that space and pull up another loop, that's 3. Pinch your yarn at the base, yarn over and pull through the loops on your hook. Insert your hook into the space you've just created, yarn over, pull through, slip stitch and chain 1. So you'll just continue doing that until you've got the width of the piece of work that you want. So if you want to press pause and if you need to rewind this video until you get to that point, and then when you are ready to move up to your next row, if you press play and come back to me and we'll do that together. So I've just done 6 foundation puff stitches just to show you how we move up to the next row in this tutorial, but hopefully at this point you've got the width of the project that you require. And to move up to the next row, what we need to do is add another stitch onto the end. So like any other project, we've got a turning stitch, and in the Jasmin stitch we've got a turning puff stitch. So we just do exactly the same for this turning stitch. So you're going to pull up the loop to the same height as we have done all the others, yarn over and place 1 more of our puff stitches here on the end. So it's just exactly the same, you're yarning over, inserting your hook, pulling up a loop in total 3 times, and then finishing it off exactly the same as we have done all the other stitches in our foundation. But instead of lying flat, this last one is going to sit vertically like this. So instead of increasing the width, it's going to increase the height of your piece of work. Now what we're going to do is we're going to place 3 puff stitches together, and we're going to place them here at the top of our turning puff stitch, and then 1 here just below it in between our last 2 puff stitches we've made, and then 1 just next to it here. So 1 into the puff that we've just created, 1 just below into that space there, and 1 just next to it in between these 2 puff stitches into that space there. So let's do that together. So you're going to pull up a loop again which matches the height, yarn over, secure your yarn on your hook, insert your hook exactly the same at the top of that puff stitch underneath your slip stitch and pull up a loop. We're going to do that again 3 times, so that's 1, 2 and 3. But instead of finishing that stitch off now, we're going to move into our next space just here in between these 2 puff stitches. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the next space along and pull up a loop. Again, we're going to do that 3 times into this space, so that's 1, 2 and 3, and then we're going to move into our next space between these 2 puff stitches here. So you'll yarn over again, insert your hook into that next space, pull up a loop 3 times, so that's 1, 2 and 3, and then what we want to do is finish it off exactly how we finished off the foundation puff stitches, by pinching our working yarn at the base of that last puff that we've just done, yarning over and pulling all the loops off our hook. So you need to keep your tension quite relaxed at this point, And then once I've pulled off all the loops, I'll just give a little pull back on my tension just to pull them all together, and then pop your hook back into that space we've just created by pinching the working yarn, yarn over and pull through, and then slip stitch and chain 1 again. So where we're going to place our next stitch, let me just show you. So our 3 parts, we're going to place 1 again here at the top of the stitch that we've just created, 1 here below it, and 1 across the side. So 1 where we've just finished our last stitch off, then 1 here and 1 here. So let's do that together. Pulling up your loop, yarning over, secure your yarn and insert it in between the top of that puff stitch you've just made and your slip stitch. Pull up a loop, again we're doing that 3 times, so that is 2 and 3. Then we're going to move into this space here, so yarning over, insert your hook into that next space, pull up a loop, again we're doing that 3 times, 1, 2 and 3, and then we'll move into our next space just here, yarning over, insert your hook and pull up a loop, again we're doing that 3 times, 1, 2 and 3, pinch your working yarn at the base, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. Insert your hook into the space we've just created by pinching the working yarn, yarn over and pull through, slip stitch and chain 1. And you'll just repeat that all the way along. So your next set of puff stitches will go here, here and here. So if you need to rewind this again just till you get into the rhythm of this Jasmine stitch, then once you have, it becomes much easier. Do that or press pause if you feel confident working your way across, and then come back to me when you're ready to move up to row 2. I'm at my last stitch now of row 1, and again I'm going to be placing my combination here at the top of the puff that I've just created, 1 down below and 1 to the side, and this last one just goes into the chain that we made at the very beginning of our piece of work, is where we're just going to be placing that last stitch. So let's do that together. So it's exactly the same, pulling up a loop, yarning over, inserting it in between the top of the puff stitch and the slip stitch, pulling up a loop 3 times, 2 and 3, then move on to your next space, 1, 2 and 3, and then move on to your chain that we started with, and we're doing 3 again, exactly the same, 1, 2 and 3. Pinching your working yarn at the base, yarning over, pulling through all the loops on your hook. Give your tension a little pull if you need to pull the stitches together. Yarn over and pull through again and chain 1. And then what we need to do is another turning stitch. So we need to create another turning puff stitch here. So we'll turn our work, pulling up the loop to the same height, and the turning stitch is just going to go into the top of this stitch that we've just created here, the top of the puffs just below the slip stitch that we did. So pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into that space, pulling up a loop 3 times, so that's 1, 2 and 3. So then grab the base of your yarn, pull through, insert your hook into the space that you've just created, yarn over, pull through again and chain 1. So our next stitch along is going to be exactly the same as we've been doing previously. We're going to start it here underneath that puff stitch that we've just created. Then we're going to move down below to this space and then move one across to this space. So let's just work that one together. Pull up your loop, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop 3 times, 1, 2 and 3, then move to the space below, yarning over, insert your hook, pulling up another loop, 1, 2 and 3, and then we need to move into this space here, so yarn over, insert your hook and pull up a loop, 1, 2, 3 times. Pinch the base of your working yarn, yarn over and take off all the loops on your hook. Insert your hook back into that space you've just created, yarn over, pull through, slip stitch and chain 1. And then you'll just work your way across exactly the same, working into the last puff that you just created, 1 down below and 1 to the space to the side. So 1 where you've just worked 1 just underneath and 1 to the side. So if you want to make your way all the way across and then come back to me and I'll just show you where we place our last stitch, and again we'll do the turning puff stitch again together. I've reached my last stitch of row 2, so I just wanted to show you where we're placing the last part of this stitch. So we're going here as we have done previously, just the same, 1 down below, just the same, and then we need to do 1 here. So if you turn your work towards you a little bit, you should be able to see this little V, which is just here, and that's where you're going to be placing your hook to pop your last parts of those 3 puff stitches together, just under that V there. So you might not be able to see it with your work flat, but if you just rotate it towards you a little bit, it becomes a little bit more obvious, and that's where we're placing our hook. So let's do this last one together and then we'll do 1 more turning puff stitch and then you are good to go. So pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the top of that last stitch underneath the slip stitch and place your 3 stitches there, yarn over, moving down below, inserting your hook, pulling up a loop 3 times into that space, that's 3, then yarn over and inserting your hook just underneath the 2 strands which make up the V, which is just on the end there, yarning over and pulling up a loop, again a total of 3 times, 2 and 3. Pinch your working yarn at the base, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook, insert your hook back into that space we've just created, yarn over, pull through, slip stitch and chain 1. So then if we turn it, and you can see the stitches already looking really beautiful even on just this small swatch. So pulling up a loop, I'm going to create my next turning puff stitch, yarning over, inserting my hook at the top of that puff stitch underneath my slip stitch and pulling up a loop 3 times. So that's 2 and that's 3. Pinch my working yarn at the base, yarn over and pull through all the loops, insert my hook back into that space I just created, yarn over and pull through, slip stitch and chain 1. And then you'll continue working that over and over and over until your project's at the size that you want it to be at. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you love the Jasmin Stitch just as much as I do. Again, please don't forget to subscribe if you are new to this channel, which will just mean that you won't miss out on my next tutorial or pattern, and it will support Rocco Baby Crochet as well. So take care, have lots of fun and happy hooking. See you soon. Bye!